I am Alfarius. I know this is supposed to be a model train channel, but I've gotten myself addicted to Space Marine 2, and I want to build more 40k miniatures. I'm sorry. Although I guess technically this isn't a 40k miniature, this is a Horus Heresy miniature, and in fact my first Horus Heresy miniature. This is an Alpha Legion Praetor. As I've been slowly kind of re-immersing myself in the grim darkness of the far future over the past month, not only through playing Space Marine, but also building the Imperial Knight. Go check out those videos if you'd like to learn more. I've realized that I've always wanted to do an Alpha Legion army, and while like I said, I don't play actively anymore, and I don't see myself ever wanting to build a full army of Alpha Legion, I do want to build some of the minis, this guy being one of them. If for no other reason than just for the meme. So yeah, resin be resin. It actually turned out pretty good. The fit was pretty good. The only real issue is his right hand didn't really line up with his arm very well, so I had to go in there with some filler. Turned out pretty good though. The entire model is about 8 pieces, so I didn't bother filming that. You all know how super glue works. For painting, I am going to leave his little backpack and his cape off just to make it easier to paint around the back of the model. Obviously with the cape on, there's no way you're going to be able to get any paint back in there, and painting around the backpack is just tedious, so we're not even going to bother. For paint, because I'm building this mostly to have fun, we're allowed to have fun, right? I'm going to be using some of this stuff. This is Turbo Dork's Cold Open. This is a metallic shift paint. It sort of shifts between, I think, like this aquamarine kind of green-blue color over to a dark blue. I realize this is not the right color for Alpha Legion, but I think it's gonna look cool, so we're gonna do it. I have used Turbo Dork's paint before. I built a Hasegawa RX-7 not too long ago, and I used just their metallic black paint for the finish, and it turned out looking great. So I'm pretty confident this is going to end up looking cool, even if it's not 100% accurate to the Lord. I guess the good news is it's acrylic, so if it ends up turning out being a hot mess, it'll be easy enough to strip off and I can paint it the right way. The thing to note about this is, in order for the color shift effect to turn out, it has to be painted over a black base coat. So to do that, I've got some of these small, just Tamiya cans of random colors laying around that I want to finish. I'm just going to go ahead and spray paint it real quick with some black paint just to get us a nice primer base coat in flat black. Glorious. Alrighty, here goes nothing. So this is what it looks like after about 4 or 5 coats. Was a little worried at first because it took up, 3 or 4 coats for it to really start to build up any color. When it comes out of the bottle, it's a very kind of milky looking paint. It doesn't really have any pigment to it. The color just comes from the flake itself, so you have to wait for the medium or whatever the paint is actually made out of to dry before the color starts to show up. But yeah, it looks great. It's a super dark and rich pearlescent green-blue color. It ended up drying a little more blue than green. It looked a lot more green when it was first going on, which is good because that's technically the color that Alpha Legion's supposed to be. A little dark right now, but I suspect once I do all the silver trim, it'll end up looking pretty nice. I'm also hoping, too, that because it's got such a rich depth to it, I won't have to do a wash or anything on most of the model. I'll be able to just let it sit as is. I'm going to start doing the trim. This is just Vallejo silver. I'm now going to go ahead and paint the articulations in the armor just flat black, so they look like a rubber sort of material. Looking good, looking good. Next I'm going to hit the scabbard for his sword, as well as the holster for his bolt pistol, with just some flat earth. Oh yeah! You can see, focus, there we go. You can see I also just hit the eyes with some red too, to match the box art. Went ahead and loaded up my airbrush with some Model Air Gray, and I'm going to just lightly airbrush some highlights onto the cape. And also onto his little tabard here on the front. And there we have it. I'm going to go ahead and clear coat him real quick because I am going to do a wash on some of the silver details and like around the eyes and everything, and on his holster and stuff. And I'm also going to be putting a decal on that right shoulder pad, and I don't want the water or the decal setting solution, should I have to use it, to mess it up. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick another Alpha Legion logo on his left shoulder. I realize that this taking place during the Horus Heresy, they probably would have used the different squad symbols like you see on Loyalist Marines these days. But I just don't care at this point. I don't know what Praetors are supposed to be. I think they'd be like a sergeant or something now, and I don't have any of the actual Horus Heresy decals laying around. These are just from, I think, like a Warp Talon set or something, so if it's technically wrong, well, too bad. So after soaking it in setting solution for about an hour, it finally set nice and flat to the shoulder pad, and then with another clear coat on top of it, it actually doesn't look half bad. And man, the depth of color really has started to come out on the Turbo Dork paint after a couple clear coats. I'm not even sure if the camera is really doing it justice, but it looks fantastic. So as far as basing goes, I'm really torn as to whether I want to base this at all, because I don't want to take away from the actual quality of the finish on the figure itself. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do my quick and dirty basing technique, which is just painting the base a concrete color and calling it there. I know some people, this is technically cheating and this isn't really basing it. But again, the point of this model is, well, the miniature itself. I'm not doing this to show off my terrain skills when it comes to doing bases. I'm showing off this interesting and unique paint that I used on the Alpha Legion Mini himself. You can see I'm using this larger brush in the open flat areas away from the actual Mini, and then I will go in with a detail brush here in a bit. Not worried about getting a super consistent coat either. If anything, that'll help kind of just make the base a little more interesting, so it's not just a gray blob. Wash time. Gonna go ahead and use some Tamiya panel liner. Again, I'm going to be using this primarily on the color transitions. The blue has enough depth to it and enough color variation to where I don't really feel the need to go over most of the model with it. It's more so just to keep the color transitions nice and crisp and to bring out some of the detail on the metallic parts. I've mentioned this numerous times, but the cool part about this stuff is it's enamel. It takes a little bit to dry. So if you accidentally put too much on, you can just dab it off. And no big deal. So as I've mentioned previously, my Chaos Space Marine army that I've been collecting up until this point has been Night Lords. So why did I decide to do an Alpha Legion? Because I just think they look cool. And I saw this paint and I wanted a good excuse to try it on the model. And of course, being me, I figured go big or go home, and I got an unreasonably expensive model to try a new paint on. But no, I've always really liked the lore of the Alpha Legion. The fact that they're meme-tastical at this point. That they may or may not actually be loyalists. I have no idea if that's actually been confirmed or not by GW, or if that's just been a meme that's been repeated until death. But yeah, if I ever get back into playing 40k, who knows? I might do an Alpha Legion army. I think they're kind of like the hipster choice. It was just when I was deciding which Chaos army to build, I remember seeing Night Lords for the first time and thinking they look so stupid, I have to, just to mess with people. Like, they're purple, they have wings on their heads, their chapter logos, the Avenged Sevenfold logo, like, these guys look ridiculous. And it totally doesn't fit with their lore. Like, you mean to tell me these guys are the most terrifying, you know, force in the galaxy looking like that? So, yeah, the Alpha Legion, their appearance kind of fits their lore of this being the sort of mysterious, like, they don't overtly worship chaos, so you don't really know where their loyalty lies. Yeah, it might be fun. Who knows? We might be seeing more of the Alpha Legion on this channel going forward. Who knows? As of right now, I don't have any more of their miniatures, but that might change. As I'm looking at this holster here, I actually have a brown Tamiya wash that I might use for the details on that. Because the black is looking a little too dark. Actually, that doesn't look half bad. We'll see how it looks when it dries. That's the cool part about just doing this for fun, too, is that I am in no rush. I'm very much a stickler for letting each layer of paint dry before I start the next one. Probably unnecessary, you know, when you work with acrylics and things like that. Again, I'm old school. I've been doing this a long time. I cut my teeth in model painting in model Trainland with the old polyscale acrylics. Actually, I've got a jar still from when I was a kid that I use for just mixing paints and stuff sometimes. That and the old flow quill lacquers that you had to let dry for a couple days in between coats because they just weren't that durable. It's awesome how far the hobby has come. You know, and I know people gatekeep sometimes and be like, oh, the D&D kids or the wargaming kids are taken away from the model train space. It's like, a lot of the research and development into hobby paints and hobby tools has come from, you know, the tabletop side of things, whoops, as opposed to the train sides of things. And like, we can share techniques and we can collaborate with each other. It's part of the reason why I'm doing this channel, is to show that we are all one big hobby family. And we don't necessarily need to stay in our little tribes when it comes to model building and miniature building. Out freaking standing. So now the problem is you can see he's very shiny. Almost a little too shiny. When you're down at a small scale like this, it's really easy for a very shiny model like this to sort of lose all the detail, unless you're holding it right up to your nose. So I'm going to go ahead and do a satin top coat on top of him. And then I may also just brush paint a flat clear coat onto the cape to make it look like fabric, as opposed to ceramite or whatever his armor would have been made out of that's been polished. So with the satin top coat, at least with Vallejo's, I can't speak to many others, it will still have a little bit of a sheen to it, but it's not going to be as in your face as a pure gloss top coat like I have on it now. As opposed to a flat top coat, which will just kill all the shine, like what's on the base right now. I do want it to be a little shiny, just not so much you can't see what's going on with the model. Much better. I also decided while looking at him, I do want to jazz up the base a little more. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of dry brush some of this Vallejo slimy grime environment texture just on the base. I think the green will look really nice to kind of offset the green-blue of his armor. Alrighty, I'm calling it there. One thing I do while I'm painting is sort of unintentionally, I set all the paints that I'm using off to the side. I don't put them back on my rack or anything. You know, in case I need to do any touch-ups while I'm painting. And in this case, you know, it looks like a pretty simple project. In theory, there's really only 3 major colors on the model, but you know, when you start getting into different effects and the washes and, you know, all the little details that needed to be painting contrasting colors, it adds up pretty quick. But yeah, I am super jazzed with how this guy turned out. Definitely going to be using Turbo Dork paints in the future. Next time I have a project that is in need of metallics. They have certainly earned my respect as a customer. The tabard and the cape are still kind of glossy. I'm hoping that over the next couple days, as the clear coat dries, it'll take on a more flat finish. If not, I may go over it one more time with a flat finish. But yeah, other than that, I'm pretty satisfied. I appreciate y'all watching. Stay tuned for more shenanigans. I am going to get my ass kicked online in Space Marine for a little bit.